Can data leaders successfully build a data culture on their own? Or do they need to work closely with their HR teams to ignite change across the organization? In this episode of Data Humanized, we'll discuss that partnership with Wayfair's head of data and analytics engineering for global operations, Nachiket Mehta. Please enjoy my conversation with Nachiket. Welcome to Data Humanized, presented by Correlation One. In each episode, we bring you the unique perspective of enterprise leaders at the intersection of technology and humanity, who are leading cultural transformation through the power of data. You'll also hear the real-life stories of learners who have graduated from the Data Skills for All program and who are embarking on new career pathways, creating a more inclusive, collaborative, and effective workforce. I'm your host, Mark Palmer. Please visit the Correlation One website for more about how data literacy transforms enterprises, and tell your friends about the Data Humanized podcast. New technologies like generative AI are top of mind for nearly all enterprises. According to MIT, 78% of executives say that scaling AI and machine learning use cases to create business value is a top priority. Snowflake and Dataiku say that 83% of analytics leaders are currently exploring or experimenting with generative AI. So it's no surprise that data leaders operate at the very epicenter of this wave of innovation. But they can't do it alone. Human resources is a critical business partner for any leader who has to implement new technologies like generative AI. Improving digital and data skills like data storytelling and Gen AI will prepare the workforce to successfully utilize these new technologies for business impact. Today, we're speaking with Nachiket Mehta, head of data and analytics engineering for global operations at Wayfair. We'll learn about his experience leading the expansion of digital and data skills across Wayfair and how he partners with his HR organization to make it happen. Please enjoy my conversation with Nachiket. Okay, welcome, Nachi. I wanted to start off with if you would tell us a little bit about Wayfair. Not everybody might know Wayfair. I was interested to find out that you started as a company in 2002 selling storage units for compact discs, the things that used to carry music before there was Spotify, and you sell 18 million furniture and home goods products and have 16,000 employees and 13 billion in revenue. It's an incredible company. So can you tell us a little bit about Wayfair and what you love about it?
Absolutely, yeah. Pleasure to be here. So Wayfair, you got it right. I think Wayfair started back in the dot-com boom when our co-founders, Neeraj Shah and Steve Conine, built about 200 plus micro websites to facilitate a lot of home goods things between suppliers to the customers. And then at some point, they couldn't manage individual websites, so they created this thing called CSN stores. And then there were some branding issues and mispronunciation of our websites and all. So they ended up hiring an agency, and that's how Wayfair brand was born. Today, Wayfair is, like you rightly say, $12 to $13 billion in revenue in a short span of time. We have about 21 million active customers across North America and Europe, and we have about 20,000 plus suppliers who offer probably more than 40 million products in our catalog. And about 13,000 employees, and 2,000 of them are engineers. So we take pride in calling ourselves a tech company that happens to be in the retail business.
Yeah, it's an amazing company, and I can't wait to talk about all that data. But talk about your personal selection of Wayfair. Why did you join the company, and what excites you about the mission?
Yeah, absolutely. So when I joined Wayfair about 4.5 years ago, it was going through a fast transformation. The data, it was data-driven decision-making company. However, because we were growing so fast, a lot of best practices and foundation of the data wasn't built right. Right. So the focus was more on the fast data output than building the foundation to go from that $9-10 billion company at that time to 50 billion or $100 billion company. Because when you want to grow that large, you need to kind of take a look at it from the industry best practices perspective. So that's where I joined, and we were going through that whole data engineering and analytics engineering transformation.
So,
And
Yeah, so talk about that role. Head of data analytics and engineering at Wayfair. What does that mean? What kind of data sources are you dealing with, and size and scale? I mean, a lot of people will have bought something from Wayfair, but wouldn't really know what goes on behind the scenes.
Absolutely, yeah. Wayfair processes over 100 terabytes data every day within the operation. So I lead the operations, which has kind of six dimensions to it. So if you think about the end-to-end supply chain and operations, there is an inbound portion where suppliers send their inventories from manufacturers to their warehouses or our warehouses, and Wayfair provides a platform for that. There's a fulfillment aspect. There's a delivery aspect. There is a reverse logistics. So when the returns and liquidation happens, like we have figured out how we can monetize that through opening some outlet stores and things like that. And then there are customer service and supplier service aspect of it as well. We are a very customer focused company, and our NPS continues to grow. So there's a lot of data if you think about end to end operations that we gather. Uh, Traditionally, we are built versus buy company. A lot of systems, applications we have built in house. So think about freight forwarding platform, the warehouse management system, transportation management systems, even our clickstream solutions we are built in house. So there's a lot of proprietary thing, but the challenge was that none of these things, like it worked fine in the individual domains, but when you try to connect them, right, that's where the industry best practices and defining the ontology and treating the data as a product kind of came in. So that's what a lot of the my team is doing.
Cool. So you're really pulling those stovepipes of data together is really sort of your escalating job as the company grows and scales, right? And treating that data as part of the product. That's what I love about how you describe Wayfair. You're like a technology company that sells furniture, right? So, what's your personal take on the need of increasing data skills across those, 16,000 plus employees? Um, in the company? How do you think about that data skills proliferation?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. Wayfair has grown to, like, from, if you think about data industry in general, right? There's traditional data warehousing when we were on prem, and then like we went to like like big data Hadoop era, and then cloud data, and then now what we are promoting is really more decoupled, decentralized data ownership, right? And each of this evolution step requires different kind of skills within the data itself. A lot of people, like originally when my team was, when I kind of got the team, like a lot of folks were more traditional data warehouse data background. And then when we moved to like cloud, right, Google Cloud, and my team was one of the first teams to be 100% moving to the cloud, the necessity was that okay, I need, like, so there I split into two parts. And one, I hired a lot of new individuals who, one of the requirements was that they needs to be GCP certified, right? So that's what helps with the overall transformation. But then also, what about the individuals who didn't have that, but they are like good SMEs and they are solving the right problems? So I partnered with our talent team, and when we procured certain tooling, and also partnered with Google to establish, and I had set an OKR to saying 100% of my team needs to be GCP certified. Get the professional data engineer solution certification, or system architect, or analytics engineering, whatever is relevant to that role. And that was the bold goal, 100%. And that's how like I help team and empower team to kind of upskill their thing as they are moving through this evolution of the data in the journey.
So that's GCP as an example of a literacy you set out to develop. What about storytelling skills and decision intelligence? I mean, these are all facets of dealing with data, right? How do you think about literacy in those areas?
Yeah, so we have built a lot of internal programs and for our portals too, uh, where we have like data storytelling is one of our most popular subject that's given as part of the onboarding exercise. It's not mandatory, but optional. But a lot of folks for within the data and analytics space has to go through that. There are a lot of like more soft skills trainings implemented in house. There are different, depending on what level you are, individual contributor or manager, and how you can get to the next level. And there are like defined programs for those training uh, to give you, and then we create cohorts out of it. So you are also networking and building your own network across the company and not within your space, while also procuring those the skills. And there are also like third party providers who can, like, instead of building a lot of that training ourselves, we can partner with the other industry leaders and providers. I won't name them, but basically that's how we can acquire and leverage what's out there and quickly train our individuals. There are other things like mentoring and lunch and learn sessions and all that that we organize as well.
So that's all part of the enablement functions that your group does. You have sort of a calendar, presumably, of those sessions and skills that you want to share with people, and that's your advocacy outside your group as well.
Yeah, so there is also talent plays a key role in this, right? So a lot of those programs that I mentioned, like manager trainings by different things, so that's more like learning and development part of the talent organization, the HR organization. So they drive a lot of those things, and not my team, but like those more ground level thing, like, hey, you have to follow this trainings to get to mature your data storytelling skills or more soft skills dealing with software, the communication first, right? So we have like how you can have a TLDR kind of communication before going into more detail. So all those kind of things like go with the role, and the more role specific, the lunch and learn and all that are more team specific. One other thing that we implemented, which was very successful, was what we call like deal program, drop everything and learn. And we gave like certain hours on Fridays to have no meetings, and then block calendars, snooze off your Slack alerts and things like that. And now you are dedicated going through certain training session to have to achieve some goal like the GCP certification I mentioned, but it could be any goal as an output of those upskilling.
Drop everything and learn. I like that. So deal, you call that the deal session. All right. I like it. All right. Friday afternoon. Yeah, we used to do it. We used to crack beers open in the afternoon on Fridays and practice presentation skills when I was in sales. And it wasn't, I think that was fun, but I like the systematic way of thinking about it. That's pretty cool, where people just turn things off and do it. That's a great habit to get into. Well, now, it sounds like you have really good support at an executive level at Wayfair for these kinds of programs. Can you talk about how you get that buy-in from executives to support data skills and literacy and programs like this? Because that's a challenge that a lot of people come to us and say, "Well, how do I get our culture to think about data, storytelling, decision intelligence as a thing that we really all have to learn?"
Yeah. So I think the best way is to connect that with some business outcome, right? Like, how do we measure? Like, there's a lot of investment being made more from personnel perspective, the tools and the processes. But what's the output? It's very difficult to measure that ROI. Uh, One of the examples that I'll give, which was a big transformational change, is my key partner is the chief operating officer, and how they kind of track their business is through the KPIs, right? KPIs are everywhere. Uh, and they have, like, even for board of directors, there are set of like QBR reports, and then there are MBR and WBR and all that. So they kind of created a pyramid, and like a top of the pyramid is this like more executive level, very niche, very aggregated KPIs, and then like as you go down in the pyramid, there are more and more metrics that each of their staff is using to drive the business. The problem happened when we were scaling geographically, right? Like from North America to Europe, and then depending on the team structure, and this was all people, process, and tooling issues across the board. But when they are leveraging these KPIs to run their business, and then they don't have consistent definitions of those KPIs across geography or across like how we treat our verticals with like small parcel and large parcel kind of thing, or a dropship business versus our Castlegate business, which I didn't talk about. But Castlegate is our like fulfillment by Wayfair like thing, versus we still have a lot of suppliers drop shipping directly to customers. So we measure our business using all of this, and the challenge was when executives were looking at like different levels of reports, they didn't see the data matching, right? It's a classic problem in most large organizations. So what we did was we created this thing called KPI Council, and that had the members from directly the COO staff and their representatives, and they aligned to kind of make sure that the definitions are consistent across all those different categories and verticals that we talked about. And then there was a lot of like communication and marketing aspect of saying like any new thing any new program, any new feature change, engineering or application goes through, it has to consider and go through the KPI council to make sure that we are including all the inclusions, exclusion filters to measure the performance, the success criteria, you know, and that kind of drove a lot of data literacy in a sense that okay, we need to create the foundational data to meet this KPI council approved or metrics as an end from the BI perspective. And now we made all of that available out in public so anyone could access that. And then our partners, our chief executives and all, they started sharing a lot of those outcomes in their operational town halls and other MBRs and all that. So everyone knows that ultimately this is the source of truth that everyone should be using, and then go away from the different definitions of
That's a pretty progressive way of dealing with KPIs at a global corporate level. Did you start there? I'm curious when you got there, or who? How did you establish that council and make it part of the culture?
uh, we had a lot of scars talk about. uh, we had many different failed attempts to solve that problem, right? We and then at the end, like we ended up like creating like mini POC or MVP, saying like targeting a specific domain and taking a small sample, showing like involving the people, process, and tooling aspect to saying this is how it needs to be built, and then kind of scale from that smaller to a domain to a multiple larger scale at the end. There were various failed attempts from technology perspective, from people alignment perspective, that I can go on for long. But no, it wasn't that easy process. It took a very long time to get to that.
And it's probably never over, right? I mean, it sounds to me like your council meetings are regular, or you're constantly identifying other places where there might be gaps, right? So it's a continual process as well.
It is continuous improvement process for sure. Yeah, and I think more difficult part is how each actors within your uh, the the single threaded ownership kind of aligns to that as well, right? Because the technology, like when they are like as software engineers working directly with business to solve certain problems, they are thinking about solving that problem, right? Like analytics or data may be a byproduct. Like that's where I'm kind of saying like more recently, I'm kind of spearheading and promoting this like data as a product. So that culture change needs to happen from the ground level up when you start thinking about any change that will impact a business. And then all the KPI council or analytics needs, ultimately it's part of the success criteria that needs to be established when you are deciding whether to invest something in some business change or a technology change or not.
I love your notion of data as a product. Can you talk about what that means to you? How do you talk about that internally to Wayfair and other executives and get people to change the way they think about data by viewing it as a product?
Yeah, so that's a that's a classic problem. I think not just Wayfair, but many places, right? Where especially when you have like more centralized teams and mechanisms where data engineers or data warehouse data analysts try to get data from the data producers and they apply a lot of patches, a lot of data transformations to make some sense out of data, right? So bring data to insights and insights kind of trigger some actions and decisions at the end, but that's a very lengthy process, and it's not going to go away anytime soon. But how do we kind of make the data producer accountable for the data and be aware, make them aware of their data consumers directly? Because what happens many times is ultimately like data producers don't even know who is consuming that data for analytics purpose down the road, right? So what I'm trying to do is just like simplifying this notion of hey, for any use case, you are either a data producer and data consumer. Now, when you kind of simplify that and remove a lot of actors from in the middle, Then data as a product ownership, and there's a systematic enforcement like data contracts and all that comes into play that you can mention and create. Now, going back to the data as a product mentality, what we did was we wrote a lot of like documentation and white papers internally, but to simplify, like think of product principles, right? Marty Kagan is like well-known voice, and he defines a product as something that's usable, valuable, and feasible. Right? There are basic three principles. Data principles are also wide known. There are FAIR principles to treat any data, and those are wide known. Many organizations, especially with good governance, are following. So what we did was we combined this two, and then there is also like active voices like Zamak has defined its own like data product within the data mesh architecture. So we kind of leverage a lot of those learnings too, and we define our own principles for data as a product, saying when you treat data as a product, it has to follow these properties, and here are the examples that it needs to follow. And the ownership is an important part. Documentation, the discoverability, the quality, uh, the trust in the data. There are a lot of those things that we define. Now, if I give an analogy, uh, thinking about our customers as consumers and our suppliers as producers, although they are not producers, the manufacturers are producers and they are kind of middlemen. And then there's 40 million plus products that I talked about. Those are the products that we treat, right? Now, how would our customers trust the data or the product, right? What they do is they look for the ownership aspect. Like, is this like well-known supplier? Is this like, does that product have good reviews? If I have any issues with that product, can I get a better support and what that history looks like? If I have any questions, can I get those questions answered easily? That's what like typically consumers look for from a product. So we applied same mentality to data as a product. That when you have data, when you treat data as a product, needs to have good documentation, good explanation, good reviews, like some other consumers supporting that yeah, this is like a gold data versus a raw data that I'm using for so and so use cases. A lineage, right? Where that product came from. Like, is it coming from like more trusted sources or would it have durability and reliability? So a lot of those common principles are transferred to the data as a product. And that's how we are kind of spreading the cultural aspect of that. And then connecting that with this more technology aspect by building, my team is building platform where we enforce the data contract systematically between the producers and consumers. So if producers try to violate the data contracts, they are not in like some Google documents or documents, data dictionaries that are not followed and enforced. We can enforce them systematically during their build pipeline within the software development lifecycle so that we can catch those issues sooner than later.
I love the reference to Marty Kagan's work. Of course, the author of some of the better books on product management. So you're really starting to combine a mentality of a product manager, right, with the data that you're supplying to the rest of the company too. So it puts a little bit more responsibility on the product owners themselves, which I also love. We talk a lot about here is the notion of a decentralized center of excellence, if that makes sense, right? Where
Yeah.
it's not, sort of like the old days of data being owned up in the ivory tower. You've pushed that responsibility down to the business owners as well, and with a nice balance too with your data pipeline comments that you've made. So I think there's a lot for people to take from the way you've thought about it. Does that ripple through to the way you think about data skills and learning and development teams? I mean, do you, when you're developing that curriculum for everybody to know about data, do you also say, hey, we've got it's not just couches and chairs and tables, right? It's the data that we're producing that's a real true product. And how do you get learning and development to teach people about thinking about data as a product?
Yeah. So our efforts until now has been pretty much within the actors and roles that have something to do with the data, right? The data engineers, the data analysts, data scientists, and all of that. And they had some flavor of familiarity and the data skills, as like talked about the evolution. Like they have to brush up or upskill their skills to get there, right? Now we are getting in the territory where people were treating unintentionally data as a byproduct because that was not their kind of core focus, right? And now with spreading this data as a product mindset, we are getting into the space, moving more left to the product managers and the software engineers, right? So that's where product managers play a key role. Like some organizations have data product managers as roles defined, right? Or data product owners. Uh, we may get there at some point, but with the overall staffing, we are really actually putting that onus on the product managers, the software product managers, to own that responsibility. And then teaching the software engineers on how to treat data as a product and what it means for a software engineer, right? Directly, they spend most of their time within the code. So, what it means within the Git repository and how they can treat data as a product. And that's where this data contract and like what they are publishing through like the YAML files and things like that kind of comes in. And that education is different than what we are educating product managers. So it's an active process. I wouldn't say we have solved that problem. It's a long journey, and that kind of goes back to that decentralized, decoupled uh, piece that you mentioned. Because part of like overall effort, the data mesh, so-called data mesh, and now it's broken down into many different things, is the federated data governance, right? And how do we kind of provide that decentralized or federated data governance within the domains who owns the data at the end of the day? It's a journey we are still on.
So talk about your unique view of the retail industry with the data that you have, because of course, as you've mentioned, you're not just selling furniture and home goods. It's really a systematic view you have across retail, from transportation, shipping, customs suppliers, your customers. So, given that you have such rich information about the entire ecosystem, how does data skills impact these areas and the operations, and kind of maybe even give us some examples that a average person that might have bought a CD rack or a kitchen table from Wayfair might spot as something insightful about what you learned from having that broad view of the supply chain and your customers.
Yeah. So when we started the business back in the days, right, it was 100% dropship business. And then the challenge, like in any furniture or home goods market, and again, this is online business I'm talking, right? Like, so we are part of like $800 billion TAM, right? And part of that is like 25% is online and 75% is physical retail. By 2025, it's expected to be 50-50 split.
Wow.
So if we continue on the online space, we are still not capturing a good portion of the TAM, right? So that's where Wayfair has started like our physical retail store. So people who may not be aware of, we have our other specialty and luxury brands, Birch Lane, Joss and Main, All Modern, Perigold, so those are some of those specialty retail, and we have opened about 5 physical retail stores so far, and a big IKEA size, 150,000 square feet store is coming up in the April of next year in the Chicago neighborhood. And then we have a lot of outlet stores and all that we are expanding. Many people may not know about our B2B business where we serve, and that's very fast growing business where we supply home goods and furnitures to hospitals and schools and governance agencies and things like that, hotels and all. Right, there's a home designer aspect of it, like who order it in bulk. So there are a lot of those area where we have leveraged data to make those decisions, where to invest, where to divest. And there are so many initiatives where we created and then data did not support and we ended up divesting as well, right? So it's making fast, nimble decisions always helps. Also, traditionally, we were more buy versus build company, like I mentioned, like Clickstream, a lot of like this solutions we have built and new executives coming in and challenging that, okay, is it really worth investing and building everything, right? Can we leverage something off the shelf that will also provide more industry standard consistency to grow versus building, right? And it's not completely moving from one end to another, but at least that evaluation and going through that spend therapy helps, and data also helps in that, right? What's your total cost of ownership? of building something or buying something, and those are the areas where it really helps us. One of the examples is, like, I think I mentioned the dropship portion,
Mhm.
where we built this Castlegate program a while back, and that's to provide a faster speed to customers, right? Where traditionally furniture used to take weeks, if not months, to deliver after you place an order. Now Wayfair can deliver within 5 to 10, max like 2 weeks, right? 5 to 10 business days, or two weeks time frame. So that Castlegate program, and when we kind of identified and captured a lot of this data, we realized that, okay, that has a 20% faster speed than the dropship customer. We have like much higher conversion rate. We have much higher reliability, and then overall customer NPS was 10 to 20% much higher points, much higher, right? So that's when we realized that, okay, it's a great investment. That's what customers are looking for at the end of the day. But we also have like some other challenges to how can we minimize our operational costs, how we can continue to have incidents free delivery to the customer so that we don't incur much higher reverse logistics costs. So a lot of those decisions from business perspective we are making are driven by data at the end.
Mhm. Talk about anything you're thinking about in terms of AI and automation, right? So that speeding of delivery has got to be impacted by maybe predictive analytics or something you're doing to, internally to make things more automated. Can you give us a glimpse for what you're trying to do there or have found, or what you think's also important in terms of how data skills and literacy have to be impacted by that as well? Because a lot of people fear automation, but when you put it from the perspective of, hey, our customers are happy because they're getting their stuff faster, that's a big ROI. So how do you think about the role of AI and automation at Wayfair?
Yeah, I'll kind of break that answer in three parts, right? One, the importance of data, what we are doing in the AI ML space, and then Gen AI particularly, because that's a buzz, right? So data is a foundation, and I think that's one advice to many enterprises out there, where if you don't have a good data strategy and data foundation set up, don't rush to get to the AI and Gen AI race, because you'll realize later, sooner or later, that the I think there's a wide note fact that data scientists spend 70 to 80% of their time cleaning and crunching data before doing something value add from modeling perspective, right? So don't do that if you don't have a good data skills, data foundation set. So that's number one. Number two, on the AI space, Wayfair has been doing AI ML for a decade, right? Like a lot of this data driven decisions that I mentioned, we have done a lot of fraud detection algorithms, right? We have done a lot of inventory management, especially when Wayfair doesn't own any of this inventory. Right? This is our inventory is owned by suppliers. So it's not traditional supply chain that we manage. It's really identifying like our programs like GeoSort, right? How what inventory do we put much closer, which region, much closer to the customer so that we can offer that faster delivery and reliability and all. And there's a lot of modeling and data scientists and operational research that happens in that space. Fraud detection is great because that when we were growing, our margin was much higher. And in order to provide better customer service, we would offer easy refunds and ask customers to keep their product because the return cost was much higher and all. And that created a lot of scams. There were a lot of internet articles and videos out there which kind of had like how to scam Wave, right? And so we realized that how we can kind of stop all that, and we have a very robust fraud detection in place where we can stop those bad actors. So we have been doing that for a while now. In the third Gen AI space, we started when the Chat GPT became a craze or came out last year. We were first to kind of like jump on it, and then we have implemented few use cases in our more customer service side of things, right? So what we have done, we haven't, I wouldn't say that we have automated 100% of that thing using Gen AI. We still have human in the loop with a lot of things that we are doing, right? So agent copilot is one example where we have like created buttons when the customer service agents are dealing with on multiple channels, the chat or the phone call or others, and they can, like, we are leveraging our data to say, if you want a quick response, click here, and then that agent co-pilot will write it for you, and then they have ability to modify it if that doesn't work, right? So those kind of innovations are happening. We are also the plug out there that we implemented recently and released out in the press is a thing called Decorify. So for customers, they can go to decorify.wayfairnext.com and they can tell what kind of design services they are looking for, like how they are remodeling their existing room. So they can take picture, upload the image, and then say traditional or transitional or more modern, and it will give you a quick image creation of how the the room should look like with the inventory suggestions and things. So there's a lot of things we are doing on the Gen AI space, and there's more coming. Right, we are like thinking how we can build our own foundational models instead of leveraging one of the open source models by training our own data. But that takes longer, right? It
Mhm.
also comes with a higher cost. So we have been doing a lot.
That's fantastic. If I can follow up on the generative AI for your agent co-pilot, right? So you must be accessing, your internal data fabric, if you will, or your data mesh, right, to help the agents as a co-pilot answer some of those questions. So have you gone through starting to integrate the two, sort of a public LLM or generative AI fabric along with your internal data? I mean, how do you think about the role of uh, you know massive models and working
Yeah.
with you have a lot of data internally, but how do you cross that bridge to get effective answers and make sure your agents aren't hallucinating and giving the wrong answers, for example?
Yeah. Yeah. So it's all pilot, and we're making sure there's still some hallucination, but still it has yield in our A/B testing, like better conversion rates or lower address handling time and things like that. But we are very cautious. We have a Gen AI council to make sure that any new thing that we want to do in the Gen AI follows this best practices. Governance and data privacy plays a big role, right? So we are following all those like data governance and privacy laws out there where we don't mix the customer information with the information, right? It's more like internal data that's not sensitive information and things like that. So we are taking very measured steps in that direction. And that's why I say that we may end up building something like foundational model of our own, but we are taking very cautious steps on what are the use cases that will not hurt us, then benefit us.
Well,
Right? There are other use cases like code generation for our internal engineers, like when we are going through the tech transformation from like monolith to microservices, and there are a lot of references to the monolith references that we are leveraging and piloting some Google native products and other products to say, okay, how can we expedite that tech transformation?
I love how you've mentioned a couple things in there, right? You're leveraging your notion of a council, so that's a collaboration across functions in the company, right? To not only help you with KPIs. Your first one you talked about was a KPI council. Now you're talking about a generative AI council or an AI council, right? How do you make sure that the right things from a governance perspective are done? So it sounds like you're really leveraging the culture you've established to sort of evolve as you address things like AI, which is really very interesting. And I think those are all good things that folks can learn from. Well, this has been fantastic. We love to finish up with our 3, 2, 1 question. So, of all the things we've talked about here, and we've cut across a lot of areas, what would you say were the three big takeaways of your views on the evolution of data skills and data literacy and getting more people access to that? Then, if you went to a desert island, what two books would you take? They don't have to be about data literacy. They could be anything. But what would you? But for people that are really trying to learn from what you've done at Wayfair, what would you recommend? And then the favorite quote that you wanted to leave us with.
Okay. Excellent. So three things from this session, I would say treating data as a product and whole that mindset change is a big long step, but start somewhere and start shaping that. I would say that's very important as we move forward. Two, I think data literacy is not a necessity. It's must, right? I think like how internet was not a luxury and it's like more necessity. I think same I would call for the data literacy. It's not a luxury anymore. It's not a skill, a nice to have skill. It has to be a mandatory thing that every organization needs to follow if they really want to catch up to the competition. Um, Three, I would say define like what you can build in house versus you can leverage the industry experts, whether to build or upskill the data literacy, or building the tools in house versus buying things like that. Like do your data driven analysis and decide based. The second question was the books. I am I read books, but I think nowadays I am more podcast person. I listen while I'm on the go. So I would say I really enjoy, and especially you mentioned Deserted Island. My favorite one that I would take with me is Lex Friedman podcast.
Love
It's
Lex.
just he has vast perspective from science to art to philosophy and all, like, so that will keep me sharp and kind of challenge my brain when I'm on the desert island. And then the second could be I think there are a couple I have in mind, but I will mention like there is On Purpose with Jay Shetty. I think he also kind of challenges and kind of like makes the wisdom go more viral, right? Just like more wisdom in general, work or life or whatever. So I love that. So I would highly recommend that, and I'll take that with me. Um, what was your last question about the quote, right?
One
Yeah,
quote. Yep.
I, I'm I'm a Abraham Lincoln fan, right? So I would the one I like is the best way to um, create future is to invent it. Really, there are a lot of things out there, and that's the best way that you take the leadership role. You leverage data, you make data-driven decisions, and then figure out and solve the problem and invent it and figure.
Love it. Love it. Thank you so much for spending some time with us here, Nachi. It was great hearing what's behind the scenes of all the furniture and home goods we're getting from your great company, and loved all the wisdom that you shared with us. So thanks so much.
It was a pleasure. Thanks, Doc. Thanks for having me. Loved the conversation. Thank you.
Next, we'll hear from Susanna Benavides, a graduate of Correlation One's Data Skills for All program. A quick note, this segment was recorded back in 2020 when Susanna completed DS4A's Data Analytics and AI program.
Hi, my name is Susana Benavides. I'm a mom of three, proud Latina, born and raised in Los Angeles, Boyle Heights to be exact. I just recently wrapped up my studies at Stanford, where I went back to school later in life, 4 years ago, pursuing my computer science degree in the AI track. I applied for many reasons. I'm sure that many of you can relate, feeling that sense of imposter syndrome. And even with a degree from Stanford in computer science, where I've taken many courses in AI, machine learning, I still feel like something's missing, and that's the applied skills. So I'm really excited that I will get to learn this along with an incredible cohort, incredible diverse cohort, which is even more exciting. I think one is my unique perspective from my life experience. I did not, go straight into university and finish a degree after high school, which I'm sure was surprising to many because I have always been a really good student, working hard. My goal, my dream was always to go to school. But personal life circumstances, sort of got in the way and veered me off a different path. And that path includes, hustling to provide a living for my two daughters when I was a single mom. It includes how I essentially kept creating positions for myself with the work that I was doing, the networking, the community engagement, the freelance writing, and all of these life experiences I think are powerful because I can see data science applications that maybe others can't. I think I also just appreciate this knowledge so much more because it's taken me so hard to acquire it. And I think that we can all positively impact data science. I hope that my energy and my efforts and my resilience comes across in that, and that it helps shape the future of data science for the better. I've always wanted to have my own company. It's especially important to me because my parents are immigrants from Mexico. They worked their whole lives doing manual labor and coming home exhausted. It really felt like I didn't have parents because when I would wake up, they'd be gone. When I'd come home, they'd be sleeping. I felt like it was important for me to have my own company so that I could enact a positive and sort of a positive manner in which people can succeed without losing themselves. I believe a lot in empowering others. I don't think that you can rise if you don't help others come up as well. I think that's actually the best way to measure success is how many people have you helped? How have your contributions been for the good of society? How have you helped your community in a way that maybe no one else can?
Susanna's story is so compelling. Here's 3 reasons why. First, she felt the effects of imposter syndrome. Despite being qualified and skilled, at times she struggled with her professional confidence. Second, Susanna is a single mom. Her own parents had to work extremely hard for her upbringing, and she wants to be there for her kids. So developing new skills in AI provides a more flexible career opportunity for her. Number 3, Susanna is committed to using her skills to benefit others. She wants to deliver an impact on society via her digital and data skill set with AI. So why does Susanna's story matter? Workers like Susanna are critical for developing a workforce with unique perspectives and mitigating bias. And enterprise leaders need to find ways to diffuse feelings of imposter syndrome and leverage workers like Susanna to build a strong data culture that can drive forward new initiatives like AI. We close with a weekly segment we call The Big Number. We heard from Nachiket how he partnered with HR at Wayfair to drive adoption of new technologies via improved digital skills. And we also heard from Susanna about the need for unique perspectives and the tremendous impact that new skills like AI have for individual workers and their families. The bottom line is, people are still the most important variable in the business's success. So this week, our big number is 180.5 million. That is the estimated weekly number of users using ChatGPT. Despite how impressive generative AI is, though, all of those users need the right skills to leverage it effectively. Enterprise leaders must partner effectively with their HR counterparts to deliver value from AI. To do that, we need ubiquitous data literacy. We need data humanized.